My name is Sakshi. My preferred gender pronoun is she or they. Outside.
My name is Dina. My preferred pronoun is he. My name is Patrick. Preferred pronoun he or they.
Debra, she or they.
This is Kanda. I'm Mithran. This is Kavindra. No preference.
So without further ado, I'd like to call the Prime Minister to give his speech.
Madam Chair. Oh. Madam Chair, I'm a Hindu. And in Hinduism, we have so many gods. And most of the gods have vehicles. All my life, I've been wondering, how does this god Vinayagar, who is an elephant, rides on this tiny piece of mouse, who guides his vehicle and guides all around the world with that one mouse. We also have this main god called Shiva, who's this strong, prominent man. I always wondered, why does he have blue hair, blue silky hair, and very nice, pretty leopard printed shirt that makes him so feminine? Like, I think it was new atheism that made me challenge the form of religion and critically think of what is the purpose of the existence of religion, and why is it that these form of portrayals of religions actually exist. We think that is what new atheism is. We think it's an aggressive form of religion, if I can call it, that spurs critical thinking. We think the trade-off that side opening down, this side government is willing to take is that even if this new atheism is seen as an antagonistic form of method and we have so much backlashes, we think that at the end, in the long run, it will benefit atheism as a whole and also the concept of religion. And that is something that we will prove in all of these speeches. In my speech, I'll do three things. First, I'll talk about what is this new form of atheism and compare it to the orthodox form of atheism. Second, I'll talk about, is it okay for religion to be antagonistic, right? Third, I'll talk about why should atheists themselves do this and why is it good for them.
Sir.
Sit down. First thing, atheism, old and the new. The orthodox form of atheism first started off in the late 1960s, when it was a lot more laid back, where the main aim of it was to challenge the notion of religion itself and to question why religion is as such, and to challenge it in terms of putting more logical thinking and reasoning into it. At that point in time, it was a lot more laid back, mainly because there was a small group of people who catered to this form of religion. But the new form of atheism, which is the 21st century, is a lot better. We tell you there's an author called Richard Dawkins who wrote the book of The God Delusion. And it is authors like this are prominent figures of new form of atheism that actively challenge what religion is about. They actively call people who believe in God as people who are stupid, right? This is a form of new atheism and an aggressive form of atheism, something we are proud to stand by, right? That is just clarification. So, first substantive. Is it okay for religion to be antagonistic? We would argue that a person who prescribes to any religion is someone who is, as a believer of the religion, you have the right to push for what you believe is right. For you to defend your religion against whatever things that your religion goes against by. And this includes any ideas that is contrary to your religion that will, in a way, diminish your religion. Sit down. But where do we then draw the line? Because I think this is quite important. We will draw the line when it encourages active violence. Where, for instance, people say, go ahead, burn churches, burn mosques, kill Muslims, kill Christians, burn Bibles. This is where you will draw the line because that is just a crime itself. Sit down. No, we're not okay with it. The new form of atheism, you would argue, is akin to proselytization, right? Where you actively go and promote your religion and tell people that this is the way you follow. We tell you, Christians have always prescribed to proselytization, where they always believe that Christ is your only God and you should push away other forms of God. But just that new atheism, we tell you should push away all forms of God. We think that this is just an extension of proselytization. But we will take this argument a step further, arguing why do we think this is good? Because we tell you the concept of religion is something that concerns the bigger question of life, on what life truly is about. This is not just about your purpose in life right now, but it also encompasses your afterlife and what afterlife is about and what you should do to go to this form of afterlife. We tell you this, and because it concerns something that's so great, it is important that we constantly challenge this form of notion. We tell you in the 21st century, religion should no longer be as dogmatic as old people believe it to be. That religion is fixed, and this is what religion is, you should follow it. We tell you religion should be something that's is challenged a lot more. Why is it important? At least it will maximize the ability of individuals to give them this form of right to decide whether I want to go by this form of religion or not. It provides them this avenue for them to know a lot more before they make the life-changing decision. Sit down. At least on the outside, you need to call up these religions and tell them to justify. Why do you say this is a this and that this is that? Because we think by that we also make religion, the concept of religion as a whole, a lot better, not something that's merely dogmatic. Even in status quo, when something that relates to you and I as persons like politics, where you see Republicans and Democrats actively calling out each other in terms of policies, asking them to justify why do you think this policy is better, what do you think that policy is better. Even in situations that only affect our life on earth, we actively challenge this notion to get the best outcome, so that people can be fully informed before they cater to a certain political party. What more the concept of religion that not only affects your life on earth, but also afterlife. I think this is something that's really good. But also several examples of antagonistic forms of religion. We think this also exists in status quo, where you have the belief of Satanism, right? That actively goes against Christianism. That this is just parallels of two different forms of contradicting beliefs, right? So I proceed for yeah.
You just claimed that religion is very antagonistic and goes on to attack other people. And you want atheism to do the same because you're not okay with religion?
Yeah. Wait. We're not okay with religion because of how it is and it's always fixed and dogmatic. We think if this can challenge that notion of religion, we think it's perfectly fine. Because at the end of the day, in a way, atheism is a form of religion that it's a belief that you prescribe to as well. Good argument on why do you think atheists should do this? We think principally every person who has a belief has this moral duty that they are to follow their set of beliefs, and anything against them is something that is wrong. And you have that moral duty to defend it. Let's look at what atheisms believe in. They believe in that it's wrong for you to choose religion. That religion restricts your freedom. Religion gives birth to people who are xenophobe, people who are homophobe. Religion takes away the rationality in you to make an active decision. So why is it? Why is this something that is good necessarily? Because if you do not do anything, in a way you're complicit for whatever acts that is against your religion. Which is why we think there is a moral duty to do so. The same way, even in terms of religion, where Christianity and Muslims don't accept any other forms of God, which is why they actively get people to come to church, to follow them to mosque, because they believe that it's their moral duty to lead people in the right way, etc. How does this also help your community grow? Because we have to look at it in the public sphere. In the public sphere, where you have state and church or state and religion that's so intertwined, it affects the atheisms a lot more. For example, in Brazil, where a lot of their policies, and Orthodox Christians, a lot of policies are against abortion, for instance, or in Russia and Uganda, where you have a lot of homophobic laws, etc. This affects you as atheists as well, which is why you should actively lobby for people to see the light or see that atheism is the right way to go, or to show them that this form of thing is wrong. We believe that you have that you, as someone who's atheist, should go for the new form of atheism because it's a lot more aggressive and it gives you what your belief stands for.
That's the Prime Minister for his speech after the leader of the opposition. Here.
I'm too Hindu, and I'm a Hindu that goes to temple every other day if I can. I'm a Hindu who fasts on Saturday because I practically feel that that's my inclination towards becoming a Hindu. Vinod isn't a Hindu because firstly, he could not even characterize what religion, what Vinayaka actually rides on, because it's not a mouse. firstly, it's a rice field rat, and secondly, what Shiva was wearing was not some robe that he bought at the store. He actually hunted it and he actually wore it. So a lack of characterization about what Hinduism actually is coming from their side. But yeah, what today's debate is essentially about, Mr. Speaker? We think under side opposition. We want individuals to actually come to a middle ground in which we can actually create that form of discourse which is necessary for status quo, which is necessary for us to tell individuals who are religious that you should come out and should start thinking. They want to argue about how they call out religion. We say you just entrench them, putting them into a bigger box which they are currently existing in right now. Before I move on to what I'm going to be explaining to you today, which is actually what benefits the atheist society as a whole, and to how the structure of a religion is going to be infringed upon, and also onto how they disrupt the peace in religion, I've got a few points of rebuttals, and the rest will be integrated into my speech. Have a seat. Firstly, he wanted to argue upon us old atheism. His characterization was that it's laid back and it isn't calling out religious individuals. We say that's a false premise for them to be arguing about, because old atheism is meant for you to actually call individuals not to militant point of ways, which is what they are arguing upon, is to more civilized manners in which we actually attract individuals passively into coming into the middle ground to actually argue upon religion. So their whole premise now has been dislodged upon how old atheism is very bad. Because what is atheism essentially, Mr. Speaker? Atheism is to make people who can actually think on their own, to actually question what religion is about, or to question whether they should be religious or not. They don't grant those individuals the thinking space because they will essentially push them back further into the box, make these religious individuals more afraid than they already are, and I'll further explain that into my speech. Second point, religion is dogmatic. No one is challenging religion apparently. I mean, come on. Practically, I think everyone in this room already is challenging religion very much. So when he wants to actually talk about calling out religion as status quo, we think that's not mutually exclusive to his side, Mr. Speaker, because old atheism calls out religion as well. We have many old atheist philosophers that actually come out to society and actually write books onto how they want their views of atheism to actually be propagated. Because the difference between what we want to combat and what they want to combat is that we want atheism to be meant for you as individuals fighting for what you want to fight. New atheism, on the other hand, increases the religious dogma because it just pushes individuals onto the bench and they actually infringe them even more because they push them further into the box. But next, religion is bad. I'll integrate this into my speech later. Have a seat. Now, what actually benefits the atheist society, Mr. Speaker? We actually have to acknowledge that there's a spectrum of individuals who exist in status quo. On one hand, we have the new atheists and Richard Dawkins, individuals who actually come out and start calling and start interrupting religious individuals' connection with God, saying that your religion is false, hence why you should stop believing the religion. Your God was not meant to go to heaven, hence why you should stop believing in religion. Like how Richard Dawkins actually called out Mehdi Hassan, onto questioning onto why Nabi Muhammad actually went to heaven. We think these certain beliefs are what actually new atheism fight for, as opposed to the other side of the spectrum, which is normal atheism, which is such as Jimmy Carr, where people are more liberal towards coinciding with other individuals' beliefs and more accepting what religions actually fight for and to how they actually get middle ground. But how does society actually react to new atheism, Mr. Speaker? On the spectrum, when you look at people, Mitchell and Kanda keep on telling me every day that God doesn't exist. The temple is meant for you to go see dolls every day. That actually it hurts me even more, and that makes me become even more religious because I don't give a shit about what they say. I, as an individual who's religious, will now want to combat this new atheist even more to prove my point that religion does exist in society. So if they want to prove to us onto how they want to achieve a middle ground, we say they are clearly not. Have a seat. Now, how does this affect the state, Mr. Speaker? We say it affects the state in the context that the state is now actually going to entrench more individuals into becoming religious. They are, because this essentially ridicules everyone that's existing under that certain state, and it forces states to actually create harsher policies towards not accepting atheism, such as how Malaysia is actually penalty by death if if you actually become an atheist. These are the certain problems that are going to exist under their side, because the benefit that the atheist society is going to get is nothing. Because what the atheist society is fighting for is essentially to get people out, to call religious individuals out. What they achieve is people going into the box even more and not coming out under their side. But before I move on to actually about how this hampers the progression of the atheist, sure.
So the fundamental objective of atheism is to be anti-theistic and go against any form of religion on its core. Why should they even come to a middle ground with a religion that they are actively trying to oppose anyways?
What he just told you was how new atheism works, not how atheism works. And that's what we are fighting for essentially, Mr. Speaker. So now, to directly clash with that, how does this actually curtail the structure of religion as a whole? We say it's harmful to individuals who truly believe in what religion actually is. Because in society, religion exists as a structure in which ideas are actually propagated for the benefit of religious individuals. The idea that it is meant for you to actually believe in yourself, the idea that you're going to go to heaven, the afterlife, we say these certain things are part of what people actually feel safe about. When these new atheists actually come out in society, they remove that form of safety from religious individuals. They make them feel even more insecure about themselves. So some people who have a touch with religion will now actually be insecure about it, and new atheists actually block out individuals from having a connection with religion. Normal atheists fight for themselves. They fight to propagate a belief that I have freedom to not believe in God, as opposed to their side, which is fighting for belief that I do not believe in God and everyone else also must not believe in God. So on the comparative, what we actually achieve, we do not provide backlash such as what they are giving status quo, and we allow individuals to actually do what they want and do it properly.
Thank the leader of the opposition. Now to the deputy prime minister to extend their case. Here.
Madam Chair, atheism in its old conventional form and new atheism believes in the same core message. They haven't suddenly radically changed, suddenly initially we were more okay with religion, now we're less okay with religion. The core difference between conventional atheism and the new form is the method that they employ in propagating that message. So no, it wasn't true that in the past they were willing to come to some middle ground with religion, because the core belief is still that religion and the existence of God is an outright lie that traps human beings in a lot of sufferings that they do not stand by. So what is the problem? We'll argue to you that new atheism, their problem with religion. So this is my rebuttal first. New atheism's problem with religion is not with the method that religion is very aggressive. Their problem is not that religion actively goes out and shoves religion down people's throat. Their problem with religion is the message of the existence of religion itself, is that God exists. That's why they don't go out against civil rights movement or labor strikes or Black Lives Movement, even though those causes employ violent or confrontational or very aggressive stances. But they do go against things such as even Mother Teresa trying to proselytize while she is helping the poor and the sick, even though the methods were very subtle and gentle, because their problem, again, is with the message and not the method. And therefore, how do we best propagate the message of atheism? We think this is where new atheism comes in to employ a much more effective tactic in actually telling people that the existence of God and religion is bad. So no, it won't create a new dogmatic organization that suddenly becomes aggressive and becomes just like one of those religions that they criticize. Because at the core of atheism, they still use a lot of apologetics, a lot of logic and reason, and a lot of debates, a lot of publications. Those are the things that atheism is founded upon, and we think those are okay things that prevent atheism from becoming a religious dogma, just like other religions. But secondly, they say it's okay for atheism to move with their conventional form and attract passively and attract people to believe in them. We don't think that's okay because it is a moral duty, like what Vino told you. If you truly believe that religion is the structure that oppresses homosexuals, that oppresses women, and that takes away a lot of liberty from people's life, then it's not okay for you to just sit back and say, okay, if you need help, I will be here. It is your duty to go out there and tell people what is right and wrong.
We are not debating should you or should you not tell. It's the vehicle in which you use. Militant atheists tell you you're stupid. Normal atheists say, let's have a talk about it, my friend.
No, new atheism say, you are stupid, you're wrong, let me tell you why you are right. Like, it doesn't just, militancy doesn't just confront you and tell you you're stupid and then leave and not do anything anymore. Instead, if you look at the actual book of the God Delusion, or the interviews and the debates that Richard Dawkins have on Al Jazeera, for example, those are very logical and comprehensible debates that can relate to the everyday person. And I think those things are good. I'll talk to you about how my substantive person are good for the atheist movement as a whole and how it unites them. In status quo, a lot of atheists, although it's becoming a popular thing, people still exist in sporting. There's no organizational structure in coherence in putting them together. How do we help put them together, give them more a sense of unity? One, we create support structures in the sense of creating a community. Because when you're laid there and sitting there in your own homes and slowly keeping these beliefs to yourself, then you're not going out there and telling people there are a lot of atheists out here who are willing to support you if you also want to come out as an atheist. When you create a support structure, that means you affirm other people's belief, because a lot of atheists today still live amongst religious communities, and those atheists need a support structure when they want to come out and call out religious establishment. It's a very difficult thing to do, and having that communal support is a great thing to help you. But secondly, it gives you that organizational power. It means that you are able to have publications, you have apologetics, books, and interviews that you can use as materials, and also you can use to organize more of such things so as to propagate your belief. So that is good, and those are things that you currently cannot achieve if people are just going to be sporadic and doing things on their own. Why is this ultimately a good thing? We think a practical benefit is this, that you truly follow the agenda and benefit of the atheist movement. So for example, you're much more able to challenge state-level abuses of using religion. For example, even in the most supposedly progressive society like the US, you still have politicians in the presidential run, like Ted Cruz and Ben Carson, trying to use the name of God to scare people into voting for them. When you create the organizational structures and powers and there's communal support for atheists to come out together and use strong confrontational tactics to call out on these politicians, that means you give people a much better discourse, much better political process. We think those are generally good things, not just for the atheist movement, but for everyone as well. My second argument, how new atheism challenges the establishments in religion and catalyze progression. So this is not just about atheism, this is about how it's good for everyone in general. Now, it's no coincidence that the rise of mega churches coincides with the rise of new atheism. And if you look at mega churches, they're often in urban city centers where there are a lot of atheists. And we think this is a good trend that they want to continue. Why? You see, when churches try to go from the more conventional, very conservative forms into more like liberal, progressive, hip kind of mega churches, is their ability or their attempt to try to adapt to the current social change. Why is that good? Number one, it means that these current churches have to be a lot more apologetic and a lot more logical about how they propagate their religion. They move away from a lot of dogma, because in a midst of a strong atheist community, you cannot just use God to scare people. You have to use actual logic and reasoning to tell people why being kind is a good thing. So that's good. Which is why if you look at City Harvest Church, for example, in fact, many other mega churches around the world, they're very silent about issues such as abortion, like LGBT, for example, because these are things that will antagonize their base of atheists. This means they're much less relatable to atheists, and they cannot get those people to come to church. When we're able to moderate the messages of churches and force them to moderate their messages and force them to be a lot more apologetic, it's good. Because at the end of the day, although the atheist movement will be happy to have more members, you still have to consider there are a lot of people out there who still want to have religion, and this is still good for their purpose.
Thank the Deputy Prime Minister and after the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. opposition to extend their case. Here.
That's what happens when you get a priest's daughter and two Hindu guys to talk about atheism. None of them do it justice. 4 points of rebuttal and 2 important questions. 3 actually, because that good. 3 important questions to ask about the motion today. Firstly, what does atheism and atheists want? Secondly, why new atheism hampers discourse? And I'll be directly clashing with Deborah about the benefits she claims she can have. And thirdly, why the aim is that one individual should be able to access as many structures as possible with a priori good in comparison to cutting off structures. 4 points of rebuttal. Number 1, Deborah said that when atheists come out and be militant, they'll be good for contraception, abortions, and all these other things. We don't think so. The reason why we have contraception is not because of atheists, it's because of even moderate people, even within religions fighting for it. But I'm going to be telling you why later. These moderates will be shying away from talking anything about anything against their religion because of the fear of being labeled as a new atheist and a militant. Secondly, she said that she wanted to propagate the idea, she talked about the propagation of religion and the idea of hipster churches. We could see that that is a good, whatever methods the church employed to want to get people to join. But that's the key point. Why do churches manifest from something that is so boring to something that's a bit more hip? Was to attract more people. So we think that attraction happens when you give the person a benefit to want to come and join you. I'll be talking to you why atheism and how religion is propagated differs, and why atheism should copy the way religion is propagated now. And lastly, she talked about how Ben Carson would come out and get, or would be called out a bigot. But he at the same time can use the same rhetoric to mobilize the religious people and call out militant atheists for being complete assholes. So that is a zero-sum game at best. And lastly, she talked about having books and publications. We are okay with that. We never said anything otherwise. Now, a proper characterization of what new atheism is, what atheism is. New atheism is about being militant. It means you do not have the concession of another individual to listen to your preaching. That means you go out and you attack an individual for who he is and not what he believes in. You call him stupid. You say mean things. You question what he, at that moment, believes in entirety. Now, so when these individuals feel hurt, that you are questioning them and you're insulting them constantly before you deliver your facts, you already make them more insular. You already make them want to hold on to their beliefs more because they don't want to see that they are the weaker person and lose out to you. So ladies and gentlemen, first question, what do atheists want? Let's agree to the premise that in most countries, atheists don't already have what they want. It's only in the most liberal states do we have the flying spaghetti monster. But in other countries, we do not have structures for atheists to believe in because the countries themselves already go against it. So there are 2 things that atheists really want. We want to be able to live in the religion or the structure that we choose to be. We don't think that it's given in most countries. But number 2, how they hamper the efficacy of propagation because militant style isn't the one that's important. Firstly, why right now, here's a comparison between militant atheists and normal atheists, and which sides allow atheists to be able to at least enjoy their own religion at first. Militant atheists go out and attack people, you make them more insular, but you also solidify the versions of rhetoric that their ustas back home would be telling you. These atheist people are going to come out, they're going to insult you, they're going to attack you, they're going to be mean towards you. But look at us, what have we given you? We've given you heaven, we've given you a place to sit, we've given you a cool room to study. Do the comparison for yourself. Do you want people to constantly insult you, or do you want us who've given you peace? So that on the first level already takes down militant atheism. But what do normal atheists want? We want to be able to have a coffee shop discussion with as many individuals as we want, because we know that militant style isn't the way to go. It means we would talk to our friends about it, but we would ease them in at best. We would question them, but we most probably agree to disagree because we think that is the best way forward to be peaceful. Because we think that it's okay if you're a religious person. We just think that if your religion affects other people, that is a problem. So we're okay. Our stance for today is, as an atheist, we're okay for other people to subscribe to their religions as far as they seem fit, but we don't want religion to affect policies that could potentially affect me and other individuals. I'll be telling you why the policy efficacy would not work. Secondly, let's talk about the church and other major religions. For a very long time, they've been spreading by the sword, and yeah, that worked. But right now, how do they do it? They come and pick you up at home, they take you to the bar, they buy you drinks, they buy you food, they call you to church. I know because Brian did all this stuff with me. And honestly, you feel guilt-tripped because these people are being so nice to you, and all they ask you in return is to come to their church and listen to their gospel. In comparison, you have these militant atheists that they support, they come out and directly ridicule you. They call you stupid, they call your religion shit, they probably will take the Bible and chuck it down the toilet. These individuals, these trolls that happen on Facebook, the comments that they post are very militant, and that is the direction that they had to defend, because I know new atheism. When Christopher Hitchens and when individuals like Richard Dawkins appear on debates to insult individuals like Mehdi Hassan, calling him, how can you propagate an idea to your daughter that is ever flying unicorn? How can you believe in these silly, petty things? This consoles these individuals, this makes them more insular. In comparison to the religion and status quo, they're more often than not, and especially in liberal countries, come on and try to befriend you first and ask you to join them. So on that front, they lose. So in a comparative here, when religion is becoming more and more moderate towards non-religious believers, where they want to try to be your friend first before they propagate their religion to you, they win on this comparison compared to militant atheists who insult you first before asking you to join. Secondly, why this hampers discourse, and why in policy changes for me as an atheist to at least explore my beliefs on my own.
If the cornerstone of atheism is about logical reasoning and also rationality, why do you think new atheism will only call people stupid and flush down Bibles?
You don't think they only do that. But once you do that, you already make the person insular. You've already taken the person a step back from even wanting to cheer you up. Because we can agree that human beings are things across the spectrum. You don't have much problem with atheist people or agnostic people. But those that have religion in their minds is someone that you need to bring in through compassion and towards friendliness in comparison to insulting and ridiculing them, because that makes them insular and makes them want to hold on to their beliefs even stronger because they don't want to seem like a weaker human being in comparison to you. But secondly, how the discourse that needs to happen would turn toxic on their side and remain healthy on our side. The discourse that will happen now is that religious structures will call out these new atheists for being bigots, and that rhetoric will change. From we calling religious people bigots, they'll call them bigots. Why does this paradigm shift happen? Because religion wants to propagate the ideas of the other people, while atheists just want to conceptualize it on their own. But they don't allow that now. They want to force you to join them. Then that becomes bigotry in and of itself. So on the comparative and the conclusion, if we both agree on a discussion that which side promotes atheism, we think the old form of atheism where we try to befriend you and try to have normal conversation with you is much more beneficial in comparison to on their side.
I thank the Deputy of Opposition, now for the government quick. We are here.
I think it's finally time for a beef-eating Buddhist to take this debate for the side. 3 issues under my case. Number 1, what is the conception of religion and how new atheism promotes that, either for the atheists and also for other religious people? Secondly, on the real-life outcomes of what will actually happen and how it's translated to things, for example, like politics and tax breaks, which is something that they refuse to acknowledge. And thirdly, on atheism, how exactly is it that the in-your-face approach is the best way to unite all atheists who are otherwise isolated in small enclaves that never have the voice to voice out because of the conservative setting that they wanted us to debate on? We don't think that's a setting, but we will engage anyways because we're accommodating. Let's move into the first issue on the conception of religion. Let's talk about the most pressing issue that they have a problem with discourse. They say we keep calling people stupid, we keep calling, assuming we are new atheists, they say we keep on calling people stupid and only thing we do is flush toilets down. Yes, we do concede we call people stupid, but they selectively miss out the next part of the discourse, which happens all the time, which is what Dina and Deborah has already told them very early on. To tell them why exactly are their beliefs wrong, to tell them why is it that new atheists have this belief in the first place, to point out contradictions
contradictions within their holy text and holy scriptures to tell them why they believe this way. We feel ultimately if they tell you that you want them to be very nice, to go out there and buy you drinks in order for you to change, we tell you that won't happen. Why? Because you're talking about a core belief that's been indoctrinated for centuries, and now you tell me all you want to do is to tell them nicely. Chances are they'll just take your drink and go back and be a cheapskate Chinese like me. Ultimately, when you recognize that you're going on an uphill battle against such a strong power dynamic, all you need to do is to challenge those core beliefs. You cannot just tell people to change, you need to tell them why they need to change. You need to point out the contradictions and flaws within their core beliefs and question them to think. So we are willing to shut off them, be more religious people at the end. But at least their arguments for their religion now will be number one, more coherent, number two, transparent, and number three, logic. The minute we prove that they resort to more logical arguments and not dogmatic arguments to fight for religion, that's already a marginal benefit for the side of government, right? But also, let's talk about the idea of rejuvenation on the concept of religion. Because they kept saying that, look, guys, everything is evolving, everyone is resorting to moderatism, so why is it atheism keeping up? Well, we tell you that more often than not, it's also because of the coincidence that new atheism coincides with the rise of moderate Christians, right? Something that Deborah wanted to tell you was this. That more often than not, when churches see a direct incentive for them to change a younger sphere, for example, we have new atheists who, in a way, capitalizes on two things. Number one, them being very actively supported on social media like Facebook and Twitter, but also secondly, be able to connect to the millennials through, for example, interviews. These are two things that the churches will now learn to actually adopt to, and in a way, soften their approach on, for example, very inflammatory stance, for example, like going against homosexuals and going against contraception. These are the benefits that churches will have incentive now because comparative to other religions doing it, for example, Catholicism, Protestantism, they don't have an incentive because Catholicism will say, well, we are Orthodox anyway, so let's remain that way. But when atheism does it and they see that it's a direct antagonistic movement against them, they will have a more pressing incentive for them to moderate and modulate themselves as well. And that's the comparative benefit we can provide to you under our side. But thirdly, on the idea of antagonism, they say, well, we are just supposed to reach the middle ground with them. We don't think so, right? Fundamentally, even if we accept the characterization that all atheists are willing to have to drink with you and therefore just say, I have the right to not believe in God, so maybe you should do so as well, but if you don't, we don't force you. No, because simply people won't listen to you, right? And we tell you ultimately, the aim of atheism is not also to make themselves believe, but also to make life easier for them. Because even if you believe in God, but if people think that you have no legitimacy here, and people don't believe that atheism is a legitimate movement, you will never be able to do that. That's exactly what I say when I tell you that more often than not, all atheists are isolated on trends. They have no simple support system for them. When you have figures, for example, such as Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, going out there and promoting new atheism, you at least have a figure to be able to relate to, and you at least have a controversial yet powerful figure that you can link to in order for you to voice out your concerns more and challenge those existing dogmas that we're talking about. Sit down, taking in Wakanda. Secondly, let's talk about real life outcomes. This is basically what we wanted to tell you. We tell you that we want to reduce the undue influence of religion. Because something that Mitchell didn't engage in when he told us this very nice speech about why we need to have a fear with Brian was this idea that politics, right? More often than not, no religion is willing to call, for example, certain undue influence of religion in politics, right? Be it, for example, Catholicism calling out, for example, undue influence for Islam in like majority Islam countries or vice versa. Why? Because ultimately they feel that a religion calling out another religion will weaken their stance as a whole. Because ultimately it seems as if religion itself isn't worthy of this form of protection from state. Ultimately, they have no incentive because there's a clash of interest for them to call out this form of practices or undue influences in them. Because ultimately, it will weaken their own stance in that specific state. That's why we change that. For example, when we have new atheism, which is willing to go all the way out, and by the way, they say it will be labeled as assholes. We already told you in the trade-off from the very beginning. We are more than okay to be called assholes anyway. But let's move back into politics. When you have, for example, a third party that's non-transparent, that's not needing of these tax breaks anyways, and that needs no protection from state, they are the ones that have been able to have no conflict of interest in order to go all out to pounce on the truth of actually pursuing states to actually change the moderation, or for example, be more transparent about their treatment or preferential treatment for certain churches and certain religions. We think that that's a benefit that they need to engage on in their speech. But secondly, right, let's talk about the third issue of atheism. But before that, I'll take any POI.
Given the fact that literally no movement which is combative in nature has been legitimate, how is suddenly being combative is going to be seen legitimate by entire society and politics?
No. Obviously, you cannot talk about this form in very controversial, like very conservative states, for example, like Malaysia. When you talk about, for example, the United States, all forms of religions are combationistic towards each other. For example, you have satanic churches that have been allowed to be set up in New York and Chicago, which are actively going against Christianity anyway, so we don't exactly get it why they can't suddenly be combative because they are not a religion, right? We tell you antagonism and exclusivity is always entrenched in religion. We think it's only fair for us to fight fire with fire. Second issue on atheism, right? Why do we talk about this idea of unifying force? More often than not, they say it hampers the efficacy of propagation because when they go back to the Ustaz, they will tell them that they are evil. Unfortunately, your Ustaz also label Christians who are trying to tell them they're wrong as Iblis-loving people. You have the Christians telling, for example, people that Muslims talking to you are Satan-loving friends. Ultimately, this form of antagonism and this form of shit-talking happens regardless because religion are always antagonistic anyway. The difference that we have right now is we force the direction of this discourse. Instead of blindly clinging to their engagement or clinging to their arguments, they will try to justify certain controversial verses, for example, the Rebuttals which goes against homosexuals in their discourse and to tell us why it's justified. Ultimately, we tell you, the telling people to change, which is the ultimate atheism, isn't enough. It's time for us to actually move out there and be in your face because that's the way we generate discourse, and that's the way, for example, that why it's not a coincidence that atheism has been in the rise for the past 20 years. We want to keep up this momentum. Very hard to post.
Thank you, Dr. Wim. That was our position with, and the last one from the House. We're here.
Coming from the get-go, we will find that individuals being curious because we understand that everybody is curious. We, as me and Richard, are curious why it's coming down like fasting, whether or not it affect the way we perform in the day, because literally we were scared we wouldn't break if coming down fast and can't perform speech. But the difference here is being curious and actively changing his views, being combatant and impacting the way he makes his decision, and the medium of which we employ how we're curious. That is something which this side of the house needed to prove, and we think that they had so much of logical links to, and they didn't prove this, right? All we have to do is essentially prove this, that the moderation do not work in a very combative stance, and then under status quo by using the old religion, where these individuals seek this in and out, who are willing enough for you to not accept this or accept this up to you. We see that is going to bring in more individuals, and the change which affects not just like these individuals who are atheists, but everybody is much larger. But before that, right, let's just recharacterize this debate, because it might be a while, right? Patrick came up here and said, oh, this is not going to happen in conservative societies, this is only going to happen in more liberal societies. But in liberal societies, you're not going to get this, your common characterization is not in liberal societies, right? In liberal societies, religion rarely affects laws, they're more open about understanding things. The fact that the Supreme Court is willing enough to go against laws means that religion doesn't affect these individuals. Therefore, this debate happens in instances where it is conservative to begin with. But even if it happens in an open society, this kind of ideas doesn't remain in the majority party because it's a social idea and will naturally move on to all those other areas. So the point in which you affect the other areas also means that you will essentially, like, you can't just contain this, right? So let's move on to my first class, right, which is this idea of discourse. And then I'm going to show to you how this will then lead to the effects to the atheism as a whole and the way society sees this. And lastly, what is the real world outcome towards this? So let's just go on to the first idea of discourse, right? Let's understand what this side of the house wants to essentially told you. They come up here and say that this is the same as politics, it's the same as changing laws, and it's a good tactic because it challenges critical thinking. Few things. One, we're promoting critical thinking already happens, right? The medium in which you promote critical thinking is where this debate essentially happens. When we become extremely combative towards this individual, we don't see that as a good tactic, right? Reading Mitchell told you that this individual will then move to the other ends of the spectrum. When you have individuals who push to the other ends of the spectrum, no one is willing to essentially give up certain amounts of concessions, right? They believe that every point in which they give up concession is a bullet the other side will use against me. So at the point in which that happens, right, we do not see how this is essentially going to make any changes. But likewise, right, the effects of politics is rather similar. We think at the end of the day, right, if you're going to be extremely combative, these politicians aren't going to say, yeah, you have a point, you're willing enough to let me go. Given the fact these individuals individuals are in mainly conservative societies use the religious authority to gain power in the first place and use this belief the society has to like further remain in power. These individuals will usually flip the trajectory. These are individuals who try to break down our religion. This is individuals who break down our social barriers and social structures. And that's a problem, right? They will more likely flip these things against those individuals. Clearly proving to you that at the point in which you become combative, individuals are more likely to move to other ends of spectrum. What's a comparative which we provided to you? Very simple, right? The moment you're willing enough to see this in very slowly between individuals, you don't necessarily have to create, like we can see, the policy changes are like immediate, right? However, because these individuals slowly starting to reason like whether or not this makes sense, whether or not it changes, right? You create a bottom-up approach. Because when you have a bottom-up approach, these leaders on the top rarely have that incentive to remain in power. They usually react to the way society on the ground believe. At that point, at the point in which that happens, right, it makes a long-lasting change. And the discourse happens in the middle because a large group of society then come into the middle and have this discourse. So on our side, we pull these individuals into the middle. But again, right, you cannot be this whole idea of, look, you're going to have in urban areas a lot of churches popping up and it works that way, right? We think that's not going to create individuals to be more apologetic. It's a right for influence. So if you're going to have more churches in these areas, you're going to have more churches for spaghetti meatball monsters, etc. The point in which you will make this happen, be extremely combative in nature, the which you go. These individuals are now seeing it's a fight for influence, and that will cloud the arena of discussion, right? At the point in which everyone is just throwing their ideas in the center, nobody can essentially figure out where is the middle ground, right? Which means that one, you have individuals in complete extremes, and the individuals who remain in the middle have no idea what's going on because they don't see a moderate value. So me as a moderate, seeing two extreme values, doesn't know where this is going to go. On the outside, when you see this in, these individuals at least have, like, there will be extremes, right? But at least there will be some form of information which exists in the middle, some form of discussion which happens between individuals like me and you, and that is what's essentially important. You allow these individuals who have these options and opinions in the middle, and that is how you create these forms of change, and that is how discourse happens back. So if you want to question or like what type of clothes gods wear, that is how you make the difference, right? Because I will be willingly explain, right? Like not everybody's coming up who's willingly able to explain the differences and the very minute policies and these very minute characterizations of what gods use, right? But the problem is, right, you're never going to get individuals who are willing to do that if you're combative in nature. So before I move on to my second idea of the benefits to the atheism as a whole, sure.
If 21st century religion is a lot more aggressive in proselytizing and building churches, how is your form of atheism going to remain relevant and achieve your goals if it's passive?
Look, if you essentially see this in slowly within individuals, right? There's individuals who will not essentially jump on and just change religion. You can't, there's no one building 101 churches if no one goes to those churches to begin with, right? It's just a waste of money. These individuals are not stupid, right? Moving on to the second idea of the benefits of atheism as a whole. Like we clearly showed to you, when you take a combative stance, you're not really changing anybody's opinion, you're just making them completely opposite to what you believe in, right? And pushing them to complete ends. Second idea right here, and this is what they want to prove to you, that it creates a support structure when you become combative. But really, guys, think about it. You're being extremely combative. Who the hell wants to go and join and support you if you're extremely combative? Given the fact that nature of society is such that we want to avoid conflict at all instances, they will rarely join a movement because they're combative to begin with. That means you do not create the support structure. On the comparative, we create the support structure because these individuals are seen as moderates and are seen as not immediately changing your opinion and opening up, right? The point in which that happens, right? More individuals will willingly support because it's not a problem, right? The other idea which you need to realize is that this motion is about supporting, which means that you change the face of religion as a whole and make it new atheism, which means that any time in which I want to come out and call myself an atheism, people will associate me to new atheism, associate me to being radical. That's a problem in this debate. When you change the face of atheism, these individuals who are atheists and want to come out, rarely will come out. Under our side, and this is the comparative, when you change and you go with old atheism, more people are willing to come out. Given the fact that people in the US are very scared to come out as Muslims because of the perception individuals have to be extreme, clearly shows to you that it's more likely harder for individuals to come out on your side. The status quo has brought a lot of individuals out because atheism is seen as easier to grasp because it's not extreme. The outcomes here are very simple. We create for this individual, you do not. At the point in which that happens, you're more legitimate. And this is why my POI was important. Because when you're legitimate, that is when people support you.
No, go for it. It's a chair. It's a ridiculous. I'm so sorry.
Let's do a comparison. Hi, sir. Give a minute to talk about our dear Lord Jesus. He's our Savior, and He'll lead us to heaven. Next one right there. You're a Muslim. Why are you wearing the hijab? Are you proud to be a male-dominated religion? What? Mandatory circumcisions? That's a war crime. Let's do that comparison. On one side, at least it was inviting, at least it was resonating with you, and it made you comfortable in where you are. The other side makes you protective, makes you insular, makes you put a barrier between you and the person. And that is where the discussion happened. The vehicle in which we use to convey the methods of atheism differs, and we consider that. Well, which is the proper vehicle to be used is where the debate happens. And we argue that a subtle and a more non-confrontive form of atheism is the best way forward in terms of conversation with friends and not being in your face with them. Because when you go on Facebook and you try to convince someone that abortion is right, but you start by calling them stupid idiot, and you start off by calling them a racial slur, they're not going to listen to you. They're not going to take the time out to read what you have to say. And that's what they had to defend. They had to defend why, after associating new atheism with being militant, would people still give you their ears to listen? They never proved that. But we told you that this is the method in which why it's successful. 3 important questions. Number 1, which side makes people more rational, or at least makes them question their beliefs for the policy changes to flow? Secondly, which side has actual policy changes? And thirdly, where does the quality of discourse and perception benefit? If I'm wrong, actually, there's no question. First question, which side makes people more rational? Number 1, we see how the normal atheists convey themselves in debate is they would have this discussion with individuals like Rebuttals and media and famous individuals, and they would talk to them and be like, okay, this is where I think, this is where I think you're wrong. But at the end, they would even sometimes compliment the religion. They'd say, yes, Islam is a good religion where they had very noble ideas of not wanting to gamble and drink alcohol. They compliment you, but they pull you in at the same time. They compliment you and they pull you in at the same time. So this makes you a bit more convinced that these individuals are actually nice people and people that you do want to continue talking to because they make you feel nice about yourself, but at the same time conveying the message that they felt important. How do I know this? Because I'm very successful. Secondly, this is the new atheist method. They do not ever compliment the religion. They never complimented a choice that you've made. And that's a problem because the choice is an identity of yourself, and it's especially one that you've held on to for a very, very long time. And when you want to convince someone to let go of their choice, you cannot make that choice sound like it's a stupid choice. Because that will make them militant, that will make them be a bit more insular, that will make them hold on to their choice. Because if you make them feel silly, they know they've lost out to you in an ego game. They don't want that. Second, which side has policy choices? We saw the ability for the flying spaghetti monster and not meatball monster to have the right to wear a colander in your license picture, in your identification card. But they didn't do it through militant ways. They did it using the rhetoric. This is a right that I would like to have. Please don't take this right away from me. And that is very successful and compelling, even for religious individuals. But on the flip side, you militant atheists come and say, this is what you need. This is what you should do. So it dislodges the rhetoric that in most atheists even want to dissociate themselves from new atheists. Because even atheists dislike new atheists for the militant ways and their bastardous ways of talking to other people. And we think that's perfectly fine. Because once you become a militant individual, individuals wouldn't want to succumb to you and give in to your policy changes. That's when you make it harder for other subsequent countries to want to have churches that want to propagate atheism because they see that in other countries, the militant style, and they would compare you to a bad structure. But lastly, where the quality of discourse happen better? And the perception game. Our perception is at least a healthy, friendly perception. Yours is a toxic, insular perception. For all these 3 questions we have.
Time to ask reply. That's the result reply and the last page. Here.
The biggest problem with opposition is that they assume you are stupid. It's a much bigger turn off to people than your God does not exist and all of your life is a lie. Right from the start, we told you that we concede and we believe that the trade-off has to be made, that probably will end up being called assholes. Probably will become like, will turn off a lot of people, probably those people who would not want to change would be religious anyway. But when the context is that you're fighting against a huge establishment of people or a society that is already religious, especially like conservative societies where the atheist movement is probably most relevant and more important, that's where this method specifically then becomes very important. Even if I were to bring a religious friend to a coffee shop and sit down and buy him or her drinks and be very, very nice to her, the moment I say, I think, Atira, maybe your God doesn't exist, she will still turn off anyway. That is the nature. Anyway, regardless of the method that you employ, people are still going to shut up because you're questioning the core part of your identity. So why is our method then better? We think when you're going, like what I said, the context, you're going against the establishment, a group of generations of people who are already indoctrinated. Places such as certain states, the US, Latin America, Southeast Asia, for example, where even in the US, like what I said, candidates are still, presidential candidates are still have the ability to mobilize huge base of evangelicals and Christians. So even in a lot of these societies, even if you are very nice to people, the moment you say you are an atheist, you are already automatically branded as illegitimate, as infidels, and people that you shouldn't listen to. When you are facing that situation, what do? We think the old form of atheism, i.e. sitting there passively and trying to attract people or buying people coffee, does not give you enough voice to challenge the worst parts of religion. It does not give you the political will or the mobility or enough voice in the media to challenge those establishments. That's why we think the loudest voice then wins, even if everyone sounds angry. So when we are able to organize people, to give the communal structure, to create things such as interviews and books, only like with people like Richard Dawkins, only when you're aggressive enough or loud enough and confrontational enough, only then it earns you that kind of attention or the spotlight to challenge the establishment. That means that a lot of benefits can later then ensue. So for example, even religion then have to become more moderate to cater to them. So we think it's okay. Ultimately, we are okay with being called assholes for the same reason that Christians or Mormons are okay with being called obnoxious and annoying, because you're ultimately holding on to a belief that you truly think is important, that people have to know, and you have the moral obligation to tell it to everyone and to make sure that everyone hears that message. But also, we talk to you that this debate is not just about benefits to the atheist movement. There's a huge part of this debate that benefits also even the religious community, because even if atheist movement gains traction, probably there will still be a lot of people in this world that will still be subjected and still want to choose a religion to live their way of life. How do our policy also make things better for those groups of people as well? Like what we told you, that the moment logic and reason becomes something that churches or temples or mosques have to engage with, then they will have to moderate their messages. That means that messages have to be more universal, more palatable, such as being kind is a good thing and God will bless you, as opposed to if you have an abortion, if you use contraception, then you will burn in hell. Those kind of moderations of messages makes it much better for the general community. That means not only our case helps the atheist movement in getting their voice heard, we challenge the establishment and make better political processes, and lastly, we make life better for even the religious people we came to.
Thank you, teams. Please cross the floor, shake hands, and with the results in the hall.